Welcome to the first episode of Lean Construction Innovation Podcast. We're featuring Krane today with Eshan. Eshan, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
First of all, thanks for having me. My name is Eshan. I'm the founder and CEO of Krane, building in the supply chain space for construction.
What is the problem that Krane is trying to solve?
That's a loaded question, but very simply, the supply chain around our construction projects are managed in a very fragmented, manual way. And we want to take away all those spreadsheets and move our valuable project engineering teams to a better, more reliable system, which is Krane.
Can you tell us about your history in construction and kind of what led you to working on this problem?
My dad's a GC, so that's where we start. I've seen him spend tons and tons of hours managing projects, managing teams, and the stressful nature of that, and just sort of grew up through like that environment. And I started my professional career as an engineer. So I was a civil engineer working for a company called Stantec, based out of Austin. And slowly graduated my way through to become a licensed professional engineer. That was sort of my beginning of my construction engineering journey, and then switched over to construction through my master's at Berkeley, which got me to the Bay Area, which has been an amazing move, and then worked for a self-performed concrete team with Webco Concrete, and enjoyed thoroughly working on the field and really actually building projects with our teams on the ground. After doing that, then spent a little bit more time on the general contracting side, trying to manage multiple, stakeholders, multiple trade partners, and I feel like I've spent almost a decade like building projects, learning end to end, and supply chain was something that came as a clear problem again and again on our projects, whether it was how difficult it was to sort of manage all of this data, or looking at sort of the last mile delivery piece, which is like you have like too much material on my project, and like labor teams were moving things around rather than actually installing them, and that became a constant theme again and again and again. And how Krane started was like by doing some R&D projects with some of our general contractors and figuring out if there's a better way. And eventually we got to Krane and started incubating Krane at Stanford. And here we are after 3 years. We're becoming one of the systems of record at the project level.
So supply chain is really not a thing that people consider as a problem or is broken. Why is that people don't think about supply chain as a problem that needs to be fixed?
I would say supply chain is a root cause of some of the problems that we're seeing right now. Very simply being, we're seeing a ton of like productivity issues on the construction sites, right? Our labor teams struggling to be productive, and one of the core reasons are materials, right? Like we've seen, one of the things that we learn in Lean is like, having the right quantity of materials across all our different trade partners. And if you like get to the root cause of why we're having these labor productivity issues, it's because we're not really focusing on the material flow. Okay. And that's what got us into this problem statement. But like I agree with your statement about it was not a prevalent issue maybe 3 to 5 years ago, but it's one of the significant issues right now, especially with tariffs, especially with managing that flow of material onto the job. And so hence we're here solving that problem.
So many of our viewers are from the lean construction world. So can you explain to them how Krane and supply chain fits into their view of construction and lean construction specifically?
I had the good fortune of learning about lean construction at Berkeley with Glenn Ballard and Dr. Iris Tomlin, and especially focusing on supply chain as well. So we've taken some of that foundational level knowledge to like our product as well. Like a very simple example is maybe just in time, right? Where it's not maybe applicable to every single project, but it's applicable to most of our project systems. So what Krane tries to do is to understand what are the required on-site dates for the material, what are the quantities that are actually needed across these different trade partners, and see if we can sort of get the supply chain to adjust based on like that tact on the job as well. That's a simple example of
What are
like,
some of the feedback and results you've gotten with your customers?
I mean, very early feedback was like, hey, like this is great. This is, I think, something that we should aspire to, but you have to make the product as simple as possible so that everyone can use it very simply. That's been something that we've been working on every day because given that I'm from construction, I've played with some of these technology before and I've found like the ideas are great, but like the execution's poor. So that's one of the main major things. So we've used a lot of AI to simplify the creation of the data sets, but also keeping that data up to date and giving like our field teams what they need as quickly and as simply as possible.
So who are the typical users? Is it the general contractor? Is it the trades? Is it the owner? Who typically uses Krane?
That's a very good question. Again, Crane's solving one of the most complex problems like in the industry, right? Our buyer is mainly the general contractor who sets up Krane at the project level. The PM is the one who's using the PM and the project engineers are the ones who are using the system mostly, looking at the submittals, looking at the material, looking at the procurement log. But then we provide the superintendent and the foreman text updates on when materials are coming in and out of the job as well. So we see PMs and PEs heavily using the product, and then the superintendent's getting a bunch of updates around last mile delivery.
I think one of the key things that you're trying to focus on is increasing the transparency of the supply chain. Oftentimes, products are ordered and mysteriously they show up one day,
Right.
and nobody knows where they are in the supply chain.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about what does bringing transparency mean for the team, and how does that improve the team's ability to execute?
I think accountability is I would say a three-way street almost. Like you have GCs that are accountable on the schedule side and have clear signals sending to the trade partners and the suppliers when they're going to build and when the material is actually needed. And at the same time, with systems like Krane, and this is what procurement logs were supposed to be doing, the trade partners are also opening up their information on exact lead times, exactly when they've actually ordered that material. And it's creating this nice transparency of, hey, like my material's actually coming up. Let's make sure like we have like the schedule line items so that we can actually bring our crews and do the work. So I think it's transparency on all ends, right? Like GCs making sure that they're accountable for the schedule and have giving the trade partners clear like line of action for their work, but also the subs making sure that they're sending information, giving information to the GCs around materials and lead times.
So right now you're heavily leaning towards AI. So can you tell us some of the use cases that AI can bring to projects, or in some new things that you've learned about AI that people might not know about?
Yeah, I mean, we like to think that we're an AI native company, and what that means is like we're not building a simple software solution and trying to leverage AI on top of it. We're looking at AI to create those workflows and help our teams better manage projects using AI. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One is leveraging AI to extract information from drawings, specs, and submittals to create the submittal logs, the material logs. That's one of the key things that we're doing. The second one, we love this. It's called smart linking, which is a project engineer puts together this procurement log. It's a very tedious process of listing all the materials, listing all the submittal packages associated with that material, and then listing all the activity IDs that sort of say that gives you the required on-site dates. So we're trying to use AI to put this system together automatically, right? And that's been really exciting. Obviously, none of this will happen without the usage or the data from our design partners that have been valuable.
So can you explain the current state of how people are currently doing this right now? And what is the vision for Krane in the next, let's say, year or two?
So let's look at the status quo. 90% of our projects, or 99% of our projects, use Excel sheets, right? Like I mentioned before, they'll open up, your Autodesk or your Procore, and look at a bunch of submittals. They'll open up your P6 and look at all the activity IDs, and they'll manually list all the material packages that they care about, and then try to link that up with the submittals and the activity IDs. So this is a very tedious manual process that a project engineer or an APM spends hours and hours doing. Next, once they've set that system up, they're now calling subs and suppliers to keep this procurement log up to date, right? So that's sort of the status quo. For us, right now, we've been deployed on 20 plus top 50 in our companies. And what we're doing right now is piloting and testing whether Krane can completely take away that manual workflow around putting the data together, but also can Krane keep that procurement log up to date, right? Can we get the information from subs? Can we get the information from suppliers and keep that procurement log up to date and identify and highlight the risk? At the end of the day, that's what's mostly important, right? Giving the signals to the GC and assessing risk across the different suppliers, across the different subcontractors.
So you mean risk that they did not see otherwise? Meaning that if a project is delayed on a certain product, you can flag it on other projects because they may not know that the item is delayed.
Even within the same project, I'll give you an example, right? Like there are certain equipment that needs certain loose shipped items to be delivered with it. Right now, we've seen enough and more patterns of like teams ordering material without those loose shipped items that we flag it. Even before a delivery is set to be arriving on site, we flag, hey, like this equipment needs these loose shipped items. We don't see that in the delivery order. Is it coming? A very simple but very powerful example of how AI can be leveraged. Yeah.
Okay. What are some uncommon truths that you figure out from your experience that other people in this industry may not be aware of?
I mean, at the end, I don't think it's an uncommon thing. We're still working with people, right? AI or not, we have to have humans in the loop, right? I really hate this terminology around replacing, our team members. We're never going to replace team members. We're keeping them in the loop. But what we're doing is we're making them 100x more efficient. And that's been amazing to see that our project engineers and our APMs can go and actually resolve issues rather than starting with understanding the data. Because the systems behind like the supply chain like Krane will create the data sets, tie them together, and give them an idea of what the risk is. So that's been very exciting. Beyond that, it's been like, I don't think this was new to construction tech founders. It's a very difficult journey because it's spending a lot of time with our early like design partners and really working with them to sort of fine tune the product that you have, make sure that like the vision is aligned with those stakeholders have been a journey for us, and it's been really fruitful to have those conversations and get that alignment.
So what do you think is broken right now in the design and construction industry?
I mean, I think we're fixing collaboration, right? Like I think one of the biggest things that I've seen during my days was like there's like this integration between like design and the construction. But I think there's more conversation that's going on and data is getting fed more from construction to the design and design to construction so that we eliminate some of the common issues that we might have. And from a supply chain standpoint, we're doing the same thing, right? Like one of the biggest mistakes that we've done in the past is we've never taken supply chain data from one project to the other. We've never taken lessons learned from a supply chain standpoint to our next project. And this is even broader than supply chain, right? Even best practices from one project don't go to the next one. So our mission is, if we're learning something from a supply chain standpoint on one project, we better take that across the enterprise, across the region, so that everyone's learning from that. And that's one of our missions that our teams are aligning on.
What's your vision for the better future in this industry?
There's so much talent, so much innovation that happens in the industry already, in the field especially. I learned a lot about that when I was running some of our self-perform teams, where like a lot of the innovation comes from the field. And my hope is that most of that innovation is captured and can be scaled. right? Innovation doesn't need to happen just from a founder like me and pushed onto the general construction, general contractors. But innovation can come from our field team members, and that's something that I'm really excited about. And I think what's AI and the level of innovation that we have right now is enabling more and more use cases, enabling more and more best practices within our construction field. And I think right now we just have to execute.
Okay. If you have 60 seconds to tell the audience one or two takeaways from this conversation, what will you tell them?
This conversation between you and me?
Well, the podcast.
Oh, I think, any founder or anyone trying to solve a problem has to have like a clear vision of what they're going after. And I would say they need to also have like these early design partners that I'm like truly thankful towards, right? Without like the backing of their like without their backing and their data to help us train our models, we would have not gone far. So my from an entrepreneurial standpoint, I would say have a clear vision, but next find your group, find the people that trust you, that wants to take a bet on you, and you guys can sort of take it forward from there.
Okay, I'm out of questions, but do you have any questions that you want me to ask you now, in addition to what we've already done?
No, I mean, like, I think interesting, I think how, one of the things that I've been thinking about more and more is like, lean has always been theoretical. Like, at least that's how I've felt, right? Because we haven't, or like some of the construction teams haven't been able to apply it, right? And I think technology could be an enabler of like some of those practices. Do you see that?
I would
currently?
say it can be an enabler, but also most of lean construction out there in the world has been taught wrong.
Yeah.
Like I would say like 99.9% of what people see as lean is maybe incorrect information.
Yeah.
Because lean construction, you look at the original, right? It comes from Toyota Production System.
Right.
But from Toyota Production System, you have Mormack and Jones, you have Shook, you have Leiker, who translated TPS to the Western world via lean manufacturing. Not everything that they said was correct.
Yeah.
And not everything they say is exactly the same ways as the Japanese, because they were not there for very long. So you're learning a new culture and a language, and sometimes your translation may not be accurate. So then we have lean manufacturing, which is not perfectly accurate translation. And then we also have Lean Six Sigma, which is a credential version of lean.
Right.
And then we have lean startup, we have lean healthcare, we have all kinds of fields, right?
Right.
So a lot of times when people are learning lean, they might be learning Lean Six Sigma.
Okay.
Or they learn lean manufacturing. But lean in construction is a different interpretation. So if you're getting the wrong information, you don't have the case studies in construction and the examples of how you can actually apply for your projects, you can quickly think about it as a theoretical manufacturing concept that's trying to squeeze through the door to become construction. So a lot of the times with lean, because there's variations in terms of people's understanding, and very few people have worked on IPD projects, progressive design build projects, target value delivery, or even look at last planner system, right? You go out there in the world, there's a big variation. I would say that the biggest problem with lean is that the variation means that most people's exposure may not be the authentic version. And that's what we try to do with the blog, is try to show people what the authentic version is. Once you have the authentic version, yes, technology, BIM, VDC, supply chain, everything that you want to do is going to enhance it.
Right.
But if you don't have the right version, you might be pushing a version of lean that does not respect people, and it does not have the practices that actually yield the outcomes. Because if you say that we're training people and we're spending a lot of time making sure that we get all our A3s in and get all this paperwork in, that's not really useful, because then people see it as adding in more work. What we have to think about lean is, how do we bring respect for people, continuous improvement, and increasing value while minimizing waste into the conversation? And how do we align the lean principles with the methods and tools while making the methods and tools flexible, in order for people to be able to adapt it to their situations? Because a lot of times people are saying, we saw a team do pool planning this way, and we want you to do the same thing. But your project is different in size and scope, and your big rooms are different. So you still have to teach people the principles and philosophies. but allow people to adapt the practice to their own projects. And the adaptation is actually needed because in manufacturing, you can be very rigid because you have a stable system that goes on for a long time. In construction, you'd be very adaptable because you might not have the superintendent that was doing the last project. You might not have the same project managers or project executives or the owners. So depending on changing one variable in terms of one person of a project can totally change what you can do on a project. So copying never worked. And historically, we've been trying to copy because copy is really what people know how to do. In construction, you had to understand the principles and philosophies and then redevelop and readapt them to your situation. So that's kind of the situation we're seeing. But I think that technology would definitely allow for more lean practices because it allows that standardization, that data, that transparency, that visibility. And also a lot of the AI is going to help with BIM, VDC. It also helps with some of the manual processes because, even in supply chain, you want to update your procurement log. You want to update your submittals, but it's very painful. You want to track when an item is delivered through your supply chain. You want to track when it's being received. But right now, manually, it's a very big, tedious job. And oftentimes when it's tedious, people don't actually end up doing it.
Right.
So even though they know they should be doing it, because it gets pushed to the end of the week.
Right.
And by Friday, you're like, oh, it's in a week. Maybe I do it Monday, and then maybe I do Tuesday. So it gets pushed back and back and back until the data is no longer accurate. So with AI automation, we have some QR codes. We have different RFIDs and different things that can automatically track things through the supply chain. Many of the things that we're trying to do could be more automated or semi-automated to where we're more aware of when the situation is not to the standards that we want. Lean is all about creating a standard for the project that allows for a high level of quality of deliverability. And if we actually have better data and more transparency, we can see when we're deviating from that standard and we can improve on it. So technology does not take away from lean. Lean is not all manual. If it's all manual, that's not really what we're trying to do. We're using the best tools we can to improve the outcome of projects while allowing people to deliver more and create more value.
Thank you.
So what are some final thoughts you want the audience to have from this conversation? What are something that we haven't covered yet that you want people to take away?
No, I think we've covered, I guess, a little bit about our journey and like what supply chain means to the industry. And I think the one thing that we're seeing a lot is we talk a little bit about like tier 1 and tier 2 effects. Tier 1 effects being like the amount of time our project management teams spend on tracking this material, putting these systems together. The tier 2 effects being at the end of the day, like our labor teams are going to face the impact, or like something arrived too early, or like something too much arrived. Like at the end of the day, like our labor teams are impacted by all that predecessor work that we do. So I think at the end of the day, whatever you build or like all of the innovation has to go back to the field. We have to keep our field teams in mind, and that's one of the things that we really focus on. So anybody who's building out there, I think should have like that emphasis and solve that before anything.
Okay, so I think one of my main takeaways from this conversation is that supply chain is more important than people realize. It's a problem because if you don't have the right materials at the right time in the right quantity, you cannot execute on the construction on site because then people are going to be waiting for the materials or the equipment. It's a bigger problem than people realize, and it's broken in the industry, but people are not aware that it's broken. So they kind of gloss over that and focus on costs, focus on schedule, focus on collaboration. So what I would say is that your cost and your schedule is an outcome of everything you do, including your procurement and supply chain. This is the kind of like the leading indicators.
Right.
So if your equipment do not show up on time, it's going to affect your costs. It's going to affect your schedule. And what we want people to do is look at the leading indicators, not the lagging indicators, and do the things that proactively lead to better project outcomes and not reactively.
Yeah, I think you summarized that better than me.
Okay, well, thank you, Eshan.
Thank you so much,
Thank you for
Don,
talking
for
about
having us.
Krane.
Yeah.
we look forward to seeing you at the next podcast. And again, thank you, everybody, for
Thank
joining
you.
us.
Thanks.